Hello friends, welcome back to another episode of r/IDOWorkHereLady, where people who actually work places are mistaken as not. I've got 3 stories for you in this one. The first story is a guy who's mistaken as a tourist and decides to have fun with it. The second story is a person who looks too young to be working at a university. And the last story involves someone yelling at the owner of a company. I hope you stay for all these stories today and subscribe for future videos. This story's titled, Stop! You can't leave the tour. Never mind, you work here. In the late 1990s, I was a young college student working as a summer intern at NASA's Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas, where mission control is. I worked in a building that had lots of offices and labs for programmers and electrical engineers in the front, a big industrial space with a huge vacuum chamber in the center, and then me in a closet at the back of the building that had been transformed into an office. Each day, I would go out to lunch and make my way through the maze. One day, early in my internship, I discovered lots of people taking pictures of the vacuum chamber and making their way out of the building. I merged into the crowd and went out the building with them. They continued going straight, and I made a left to head to the cafeteria. About 50 feet later, I hear someone shouting, "Come back! You can't leave the tour! You can be charged with trespassing!" I turned around and saw a young woman yelling at me, and then I realized all the people were getting into a tour tram. But then, she was able to see that I was wearing a badge and said, "Never mind, I didn't know you worked here, sorry." After lunch, I talked to my boss, and she explained that the Space Center Houston, a museum nearby, ran tours and our building was one of the stops. And she thought it was funny that they thought a tourist was trying to escape. For the next few weeks, I would delay leaving for lunch if a tour group was also leaving the building, so that I wouldn't be confused for a tourist and get yelled at. But then later, I started deliberately merging into a group, and would then start to run to the cafeteria. When I would hear a shout, I would explain and show that I was an employee. After a week or so of doing this, all the tour guides knew of me and stopped getting alarmed, but I could still hear the tourists make a commotion when they saw me running, and then laughing about it after. And that made it worthwhile. This story's titled, Yes, I'm old enough to drive, and yes, I work here. So a little background. I'm a little person. I have a mild form of hypopituitary dwarfism, which means I'm all of 4'9" and 90 pounds. For about 5 years, I worked at a university after finishing my undergrad while I went to grad school. I worked with hearing impaired students, assisting them with stuff in the classroom. I also did transcribing and live closed captioning for their lectures so they could take notes. It was a pretty sweet gig if you like learning, and we were the only university that offered this kind of service for hearing impaired people when I started. The one drawback was I had to lug around a lot of equipment, including a laptop and microphone, so I made use of the handicap parking I have, so I can park relatively close to the kids' classes on the campuses I worked on. This day, it was really nasty weather, sleety and cold, but I had snagged a prime parking spot right in the middle of the campus, behind the building my student had class in. I had about 45 minutes before my student's class started, so I opened my laptop to go over the transcript and correct any mistakes before I sent it to the student. So I was just sitting in my car working while I waited, when I hear an annoyed knocking on my window. I look up to see a grumpy old man. We'll just call him GOM. My window on that side didn't roll down, so I cracked my door. I asked, "Can I help you?" He replies, "Are you a student?" "I am, but I also work here. Do you need something?" At this point, I thought maybe he was lost. Campus can be a bit confusing, and after almost 9 years there, I was used to giving directions. He responded, "I don't think you're a student. Let me see your ID." I responded, I don't think so. There's no reason for you to see that. If you don't need anything, I have to get ready for work." He responds, "You can't park here if you're not a student. You need to move." I told him I work here and that I'm a student, and you can see my parking pass in the window and my handicap tag. I try to close the door at this point, but he won't move his hand, which is on top of the door. I'm also getting nervous because I'm tiny, and while he's old, he's still bigger than me. The old man then said again, "If you're a student, show me your ID." Not gonna happen. If you want to walk to the other side, you can see my pass in the window to park. Otherwise, call and report me if you don't believe me, but I have stuff to do. I jerked my door closed, making him lose his grip, and made sure it was locked. He stood there for a minute or two, glaring at me, then stomped back to his car and left. About 15 minutes after this, just before I was heading to class with my student, my cell phone rang. It was one of our parking officers that I was friends with. The old jerk had actually called and reported a little girl in a handicap parking who didn't look old enough to drive, let alone be a student, saying that she worked there. I was in my mid-20s at this point. We shared a good laugh. She said she knew as soon as he made the report that it was me, and she asked if I was okay and if he was still bothering me. Luckily, he hadn't come back, so I said I was fine, but I told her how he acted. She said they had his info and would keep an eye out just in case he harassed anyone else. This story's titled, Dude, you just yelled at the owner, and he took it. So this just happened a few days ago. I work at a steel shop that deals with fabricating structural steel for buildings. This story didn't happen to me, but to one of my coworkers, which I found hilarious. So we just hired a new guy a few weeks back. I'll call him Jack. He's a 62-year-old guy who's clearly on the last remaining miles on his body and has seen some things. We all joke that all the years of blow and dirty escorts have eaten away at his remaining brain cells. Trades guys listening to this story can relate. The funny thing is, he's never met the owner of the company. The owner of the company is 80 years old and only comes in once every few months to check up on everything, since the company's been handed down to his two sons, whom now run the business. Our shop is a fairly large shop, around 40 employees, spread out around 50,000 square feet of space, and everyone's familiar with the owner, since they've all been around for a long time now. In our shop, it's standard to have safety equipment on. Safety equipment is mandatory for all employees to be in the shop. You must have a hard hat on, visibility vest, safety goggles, hearing protection, and steel-toed boots. All standard when it comes to working in or around dangerous equipment, etc. A little backstory about Jack. Jack takes safety very seriously. He's been injured at work before, where a pipe rolled over his foot at work and crushed his ankle, shattering everything. He was later compensated through workers' union, over $100,000. So at work, we consider him the new guy, very strict, even more strict than our safety guy. If Jack catches you coming out of the bathroom without your safety glasses on, he'll run up to you and immediately give you a mouthful. If you happen to forget your visibility vest after coming in after lunch, he'll scream from halfway across the shop that you need to put one on. We don't blame him. Safety's a big thing in our line of work, and he's just doing his part. He's a little annoying, but he means well. On to the story. One day, we're all working, and guess who walks into the office doors into the main shop area? Yup, the owner himself. Now, the funny thing about our owner is he's an old school guy that doesn't care about anything. He's an 80-year-old giant Polish man, and he loves to wear sandals, t-shirts, and shorts while walking into his castle. We don't say anything about that because, hey, it's his company, he can do whatever he wants. He can ride a pony into the shop for all we care, as long as he keeps the paychecks coming so we can keep the lights on and our families fed. Jack hasn't seen him yet, and the owner's making his rounds around the shop, greeting everyone, asking how they are, etc. He's a really nice guy. About 20 minutes go by, and he's basically said hi to everyone, and then Jack looks up from what he's doing and spots the owner. Bright yellow Hawaiian t-shirt, khaki shorts, and sandals. Holy shit. What came next was the best thing that's ever happened in my whole entire 6 years I've been there. Now, just to remind you, Jack is 62, and when you're at that age, you can develop quite a mouth on you. And also, he has no idea what the owner of the company looks like. Out of nowhere, I see him pointing at the owner from about 20 feet away and yell, "Hey you! Who the hell let you in this shop? Where the fuck is your PPE?" Jack then basically sprints to the owner to confront him. Everyone around has a huge grin on their face. They know what's about to happen, and Jack unleashes on the owner, and he has no idea. Jack says, "Hey, who let you in this shop? You know to be on the floor you have to have equipment on. You're dressed like you're about to get on a flight to go to Jamaica. You need to get out of this shop now before I throw you out. Uh-oh. Did he just threaten to throw out the owner of his own company? Now, my owner doesn't take too kindly to people yelling in his face, which is exactly how Jack confronted him. The owner replied, "When did you start here? I've never seen you." Jack then says, "Don't try to change the subject on me. This is about you. I've never seen you here. You don't work at this company at all, so why are you even here? If you're someone's family, you gotta go back to the office area. You can't be here. I'm gonna have to ask you to leave the shop now." We're all expecting the owner to throw the, "Do you know who I am? I'm your fucking boss. I own this company," into Jack's face, but he didn't. He stood there silently. My other coworker shouted that he doesn't work for the company, but he's the founder and owner of the company. Now, you're probably expecting this story to be like the other I Do Work Here ladies, where once the person gets confronted and realizes the person actually works there, they get all embarrassed and they're put in their place. Well, nope, this is not that kind of story. Remember I said Jack was a hardened 62-year-old man? He stood his ground and shocked all of us. Jack lets loose on the company owner. Jack says, "Hey, I don't care if you're a person from the streets or the owner of this company. Anybody that's on this floor needs to have proper safety gear on. It's mandatory for us, and it should be mandatory for you, especially because you're the owner. You need to set an example for your guys. I need to make sure that you go home with 10 toes, 10 fingers, 2 eyeballs, exactly the way you came. You're no different than us." The owner looks over at all of us, looks at Jack, and just says in broken English, "Listen to this guy. He's good guy," and walks back into the office. Not another word was exchanged between him and Jack. Jack's crazy, but won over the entire company that day. It turns out the owner really likes him as well. He's a great fit to our company, that crazy bastard. I hope you enjoyed these 3 stories today. If you like the stories, let me know by leaving a comment below. Don't forget to hit that like button as well. If you aren't subscribed, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss future stories. See you guys in the next one.